Hi guys and welcome to my channel. Myself Dr. Akshay, and in today's session I'm going to be discussing about the topic lymphatic system. If you guys want to learn more about the circulatory system, then click subscribe and the bell icon. So let's do this together. Coming to the topic lymphatic system. So this system represents an accessory route for the transport of interstitial fluids from these interstitial spaces towards the blood. So the most important function of this lymphatic system is that it can carry proteins and large particular matter away from the tissue fluids. And these large proteins and particular matter cannot be removed by the blood capillaries through the circulation. That too from these interstitial spaces. So the return of proteins from the interstitial spaces into the blood is an essential function, without which we may die within 24 hours. So next, coming to the formation of lymph. The lymph is formed from the interstitial fluid that flows into lymphatic capillaries. So when the interstitial fluid enters into terminal lymphatics, the lymph which is formed inside the terminal lymphatics will always have the same chemical composition while comparing with this interstitial fluid which is present inside the interstitial spaces. For example, the protein concentration in the interstitial fluid of most cells is about 2 grams per deciliter. And the lymph which is flowing through these lymphatic capillaries adjacent to these interstitial spaces will also have a protein concentration of 2 grams per deciliter. The lymph which is formed in the liver will always have a protein concentration which is as high as 6 grams per deciliter, whereas the lymph which is formed from the intestines will always have a protein concentration of 3 to 4 grams per deciliter. So we can say that 2/3 of all lymph is derived from the intestines and liver. The thoracic lymph duct, which is comprising of all the lymph which is derived from different body parts, will always have a protein concentration of 3 to 5 grams per deciliter. Large particles such as bacteria can push all their way into the endothelial layer lining the terminal lymphatic capillaries. Through this way, bacteria enters into the lymph. As the lymph passes through the lymph nodes, these bacteria will get filtered and get destroyed. Next, coming to rate of lymph nodes. In a resting human, 20 ml of lymph flows in each hour. So if you are calculating the total lymph flow in a resting human, that accounts for 120 ml per hour. And if you are calculating the total lymph flow in a resting human per day, it will account for 2 to 3 liters per day. Next, coming to the steps in lymph cycle. So the first step is filtration through blood capillaries. So as blood flows through these capillaries, some fluid part of the blood gets leaked into the tissue spaces. And this leaked out fluid into these tissue spaces are known as interstitial fluid. And most of this interstitial fluid get returned into these capillaries, whereas only 10% of this interstitial fluid will enter into lymphatics. So as this 10% of this interstitial fluid enter into lymphatics, thereby this interstitial fluid will become lymph. And coming to the second step, that is the formation of lymph. So lymph is formed at the moment when this interstitial fluid enters into terminal lymphatics. So when interstitial fluid from this interstitial space that will be between the cells enters into terminal lymphatics, at that particular point of time, lymph is formed. And this lymph contains water molecules, proteins, cellular wastes, and immune cells. And the third step is transport through lymphatic vessels. So after this lymph enters into lymphatic capillaries, this lymph will then flow towards the lymphatic vessel. And inside these lymphatic vessels, there are valves which allows for only one directional transport. And this lymphatic valves will not allow backflow of lymph. This flow of lymph is aided by muscle contraction, breathing, and pulsation of nearby arteries. And the fourth step is passing through lymph nodes. So as lymph passes through these lymph nodes act as a filtration material. The immune cells which are present inside the lymph nodes destroys these bacteria, virus, and cancer-causing cells. And the fifth step is drainage into blood circulation. So after filtration, this clean lymph enters into larger lymphatic trunks. From here, this lymph is drained into venous blood circulation, that is through thoracic duct and right lymphatic duct. So thoracic duct drains most of the lymph which are formed in different parts of the body into right subclavian vein, whereas right lymphatic duct, it drains most of the lymph which are formed in the upper right part of the human body into right subclavian vein. Next, coming to what are the functions of this lymphatic cycle. So the first function is maintenance of fluid balance in tissues. And the second function is helps in immunity by filtering pathogens. And the third function is it absorbs and transports fats from intestines via lacteals. So next, coming to the effect of interstitial fluid pressure in lymph flow. So see this graph. As you can see in this graph, this normal lymph flow is very less. That too when this interstitial fluid pressure becomes less than -6. So as the pressure rises to 0 millimeter mercury, that is at atmospheric pressure, this lymph flow increases more than 20 times. You can see at atmospheric pressure of 0 millimeter mercury, this lymph flow had increased more than 20 times. So from this graph, we understood that any factor that increases the interstitial fluid pressure will also increase the lymph flow, even though the lymph vessels are functioning normally. And in those factors, the first one is capillary hydrostatic pressure. So when more fluid is pushed into these interstitial spaces, this interstitial fluid will increase in its quantity. And if interstitial fluid increases in its quantity, this will lead to increased lymph formation. And increased lymph formation always lead to increase in lymph flow. And the second factor is decrease in plasma colloidal osmotic pressure. So plasma colloidal particles are always present inside the capillaries. These plasma colloidal particles will always draw fluid from the interstitial spaces into the blood capillaries, thereby contributing to increase in blood volume. So when this plasma colloidal osmotic pressure decreases, more amount of fluid from these blood capillaries will get drained into these interstitial spaces. thus contributing to the increase in interstitial fluid. And when increase in interstitial fluid occurs, this will contribute to increased lymph formation. And this increased lymph will always contribute to the increase in lymph flow. And next, coming to increased interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure. So when certain proteins such as albumin is present inside the interstitial fluid, this albumin will drain more water from these blood capillaries and thereby contributing to increase in interstitial fluid volume. So again, when interstitial fluid volume increases, this leads to increase in lymph formation. So when increase in lymph formation occurs, this always leads to increase in lymph flow. And the last factor is increased permeability in the capillaries. When the capillary wall becomes increased in permeability, lots and lots of fluid will get leaked into the interstitial space. And when lots and lots of fluids get leaked into the interstitial space, this will increase the interstitial fluid volume. And again, when interstitial fluid volume increases, this contributes to the increase in lymph formation. And when increased lymph formation occurs, increased lymph flow through the lymphatic vessels occurs. So again, see this graph. After 0 millimeter mercury, when this pressure, that is this interstitial fluid pressure, rises to 2 times than this atmospheric pressure, you can see again a sharp increase followed by a steady straight line. You can't see any further improvement in lymphatic flow after this 2 millimeter mercury of interstitial fluid pressure. So what's the cause of this steady flow? So there are 2 main causes. The first one is when interstitial fluid pressure increases, at that particular point of time, increased lymph flow through this capillary has occurred. This leading to this sharp rise. And after this lymph flows through these capillaries, obviously it will enter the lymphatic vessels. And when it reaches these lymphatic vessels, these interstitial fluids will again exert pressure from the surroundings of this lymphatic vessel. This interstitial fluid will again exert pressure over the surrounding lymphatic vessels from the both sides, and thus compressing this lymphatic vessels a bit and thereby impeding the lymph flow. So what happened here? Increased interstitial pressure and this impeding pressure from this interstitial fluid over the both sides of this lymph vessel. So both cancels out each other and thus leading to a steady flow of lymph. So next, coming to how lymphatic pump increases the lymph flow. So valves exist in almost all lymph channels. So see this figure. There are certain valves that allows for the collection of lymphatic fluid towards these collecting lymphatics. That too from these lymphatic capillaries. So when collecting lymphatics gets filled with lymphatic fluid, this will get stretched. And this stretching leads to the contraction of smooth muscles which are present in these collecting lymphatics. And this contraction of the smooth muscles which are present in this collecting lymphatics leads to the transport of lymph from this segment to the next segment. So this process continues all the way along the lymph vessel until the lymph is completely drained into the venous circulation. In a very large lymph vessel, such as a lymph vessel which is present in the thoracic duct, can generate pressure from 50 up to 100 millimeters of mercury. So that covers the topic lymphatic system. I hope you guys learned about this particular topic. Thank you so much, guys. See you guys in the next session.